The chamber of the Galactic Council shimmered with light from 1,000 distant stars. Each beam passed through the transparent dome, casting faint hues over the faces of beings who ruled entire civilizations. They had gathered to decide the fate of one small, defiant species, humanity. The humans were the newest members of the Galactic Network, a young race that had risen faster than anyone expected, and that rise had made the Council nervous. In their eyes, Earth was a problem waiting to happen. At the center of the hall, surrounded by towering alien envoys, stood the lone human representative. No guards, no weapons, no backup. Just one person against a council of worlds older than human history itself. The silence was heavy, stretching like an invisible rope about to snap. The alien speaker, a creature of silver skin and eyes that reflected entire constellations, finally spoke. Its voice was calm, but every syllable carried weight. "Humanity," it said, "has benefited greatly from the Council's mercy. Your planet has been protected from raiders. Your colonies have been allowed to expand, but now the time has come to give back. The tribute is due." The words rippled through the chamber. Tributes were how the Council kept balance. Resources, soldiers, sometimes even people. Every species paid, everyone except Earth, until now. The human delegate didn't move. The alien continued. "You will provide what we demand, 10% of your population for service to the Council's fleets. In return, you will continue to exist under our protection. Refuse, and your world will be isolated, stripped of trade, and left to wither." Gasps echoed through the chamber. For most species, refusal meant extinction. No one dared challenge the Council, but the humans' expression didn't change. There was something unsettling about their stillness. The other envoys leaned forward, expecting panic, bargaining, maybe even tears, but none came. The human finally spoke, voice steady and clear. "Is that your final demand?" The silver-skinned envoy nodded, its tone dripping with certainty. "It is not a demand. It is law." For a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. The stars beyond the dome pulsed softly, like a heartbeat waiting for its next beat. Then the human said one word, just one, a word so simple that it shouldn't have mattered. But it did. That word, the human answer, shattered the silence like glass. At first, no one reacted. It took a few seconds for the meaning to sink in. And when it did, the Council erupted. Voices of 100 species filled the air, some in disbelief, others in outrage. Did they just say, "Impossible"? They dare defy the Council? The sound became a storm of disbelief. Even the translation machines struggled to keep up with the overlapping fury. The human didn't flinch. They just stood there, hands folded calmly, as the greatest powers in the galaxy lost control. The silver-skinned envoy slammed a clawed hand on the table. "You cannot refuse! No one refuses the Council!" it shouted, its voice cracking with rage. But the human's answer had already spread across every channel, every network, every world that listened to the Council's broadcast. Billions heard it. That single, defiant word. And for the first time in centuries, the Council's authority trembled. To the people of Earth watching from home, it wasn't just defiance, it was freedom. That one word became a symbol of everything humanity had endured, centuries of wars, loss, and rebuilding. They had come from nothing, and every generation had fought for the right to stand tall. The Council might have expected fear or obedience, but they forgot one thing. Humans never forgot what it meant to be free. The councilors began to argue among themselves. Some demanded punishment, others hesitated. The humans were unpredictable, dangerous even. Their technology was behind, but their creativity and willpower had already shaken older empires. A few remembered how humanity had survived the collapse wars, a conflict that had broken 3 other species. How could a race so young endure so much pain and still rise stronger? The envoy's eyes burned with cold light. "You think this is courage?" it hissed. "It is suicide. Do you even understand what your defiance means? The council will make an example of you." The human didn't respond immediately. They looked up, meeting the alien's gaze without fear. "You already have your example," they said quietly. "The galaxy will remember today, not because of your power, but because of what you tried to take from us." For the first time in ages, the council chamber felt small. The other envoys stared at the human, not knowing whether to be impressed or horrified. That word, that refusal, carried a weight that none of them could ignore. It was more than disobedience. It was a challenge, one that struck at the very foundation of the council's rule. Outside the chamber, ships and drones recorded every second. Across thousands of systems, people watched. Some cheered. Others feared what would come next. Whole civilizations whispered the word under their breath, as if testing its power. Could it really be that simple? Could a single word change everything? The meeting dissolved into chaos. The alien delegates shouted over one another, and the silver-skinned envoy demanded immediate retaliation. But deep down, a few of them hesitated. They had seen this before. A small fire ignored until it consumed everything. Humanity's defiance was that spark, and once lit, no one could control where it spread. The human turned to leave, guards moving uncertainly aside. No one stopped them. Maybe they didn't know how. As the chamber doors opened, a rush of cold air swept in, carrying with it the echoes of the council's anger. The envoy shouted after them, "You will regret this!" The human paused at the threshold, glanced back, and simply said, "Maybe, but we'll regret nothing more than surrender." Then they stepped out, and the doors sealed shut behind them. The council chamber fell silent again. Not the silence of control, but the kind that follows an earthquake, the kind that comes when something irreversible has just begun. Across the galaxy, leaders gathered in panic. Armies were called to readiness. Trade routes were frozen. The entire structure of galactic politics began to tremble around a single human word. And somewhere on the dark side of Earth's orbit, hidden beyond the reach of council surveillance, a human fleet began to move. Small, silent, but burning with purpose. They had known this day would come. The council thought humanity would break, but Earth had prepared for this moment for years. Quietly, secretly, while smiling in the council's meetings, they had been building something the rest of the galaxy had dismissed as myth. A defense network powered not by fear, but by unity. As the stars shifted and the first ships vanished into the dark, one message echoed through the fleet's channels, repeating that same single word that had shaken the universe. Every pilot, every crew member, every colonist whispered it like a vow. That word, humanity's one-word answer, had already changed everything. But what it truly meant, the galaxy was about to find out. The message that had echoed across the galaxy was still reverberating in every corner of civilization. On worlds light years apart, people were still talking about it. That one word humanity had spoken in defiance of the Galactic Council. No one could quite believe it. Some called it madness, others called it bravery, and a few whispered that it might be the beginning of something far bigger than anyone had imagined. On Earth, the streets were alive with tension. News screens replayed the moment over and over. The human delegate standing alone, surrounded by the most powerful beings in existence, and uttering that word. The council had demanded submission. Humanity had answered with defiance. It wasn't just a political move, it was a statement of identity. For centuries, humans had fought wars, rebuilt from ashes, and learned to adapt. They were no strangers to impossible odds. And now, they faced the entire galaxy with that same stubborn fire. Inside a bunker beneath the Atlantic Ocean, the United Earth Coalition was in session. It wasn't glamorous. No shining chambers, no marble floors. Just steel walls, dim lights, and the hum of machines. Around a circular table sat the most influential minds of humanity. Military leaders, scientists, strategists, and historians. They all wore the same expression, grim focus. "We've done it now," one of them said quietly. "There's no going back." "Was there ever?" another replied. "You know the council would have demanded more. First the tribute, then control of our fleets, then our colonies. It was only a matter of time before we lost everything." A holographic image of the Milky Way floated above the table, glowing softly. Red markers blinked across dozens of sectors, known council strongholds. Blue markers represented human colonies, scattered and small. The difference in scale was staggering. The council's reach stretched across thousands of systems. Humanity, by comparison, was a single candle in a storm. But that candle burned bright. The meeting's leader, a quiet figure with calm eyes, leaned forward. "We've been underestimated before. They think we're reckless, emotional, primitive. Let them think that. It's what gives us our edge. While they debate and posture, we act." The others nodded. It was true. Humanity's greatest strength had never been its weapons or its ships. It was its will. Every major step forward in their history had come from standing on the edge of destruction and refusing to fall. Far above Earth, hidden within the shadow of the moon, the human fleet was awakening. Hundreds of vessels drifted silently, their hulls coated in adaptive materials that bent light and radar around them. The design was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't symmetrical, it was human, rugged, practical, built from recycled station parts and asteroid metal. Every ship carried scars from the battles that had shaped humanity's rise. In one of those ships, a young communications officer stared at the broadcast replay for the 100th time. She couldn't help but smile at how calm the human delegate had been. Just one word, spoken without hesitation, and the galaxy had lost its balance. She whispered it under her breath again, feeling the weight of it. No. That word had become more than defiance. It was a promise, a message to every being that had ever been told to kneel. Humanity had said no to fear, no to control, no to surrender. And that message was spreading faster than the Council could suppress it. Reports began arriving from distant colonies, alien laborers refusing their overseers, small planets cutting off tribute shipments, even minor council members questioning their leaders. The word had become a spark, igniting something deep across the stars. Meanwhile, the Council was in turmoil. In their grand chambers, the once unshakable alliance of species now looked fractured. The silver-skinned envoy who had issued the demand paced furiously, its reflective surface rippling with anger. "This cannot stand," it snarled. "Humanity must be made to comply before this infection spreads." An older alien, slow-moving and wise-looking, spoke softly. "If you act in anger, you will create martyrs. Their rebellion already grows stronger in whispers. Strike too fast, and you make them heroes." The silver envoy slammed a hand on the table. "Then we will erase them before they can become heroes." Across the chamber, others murmured uneasily. The Council had crushed many rebellions before, but none like this. Most species begged for forgiveness. Humanity had not begged. They had dared the galaxy to come for them. Back on Earth, the human delegate returned quietly, greeted not by parades or celebrations, but by silence and resolve. They knew what their word had unleashed. The people cheered their courage, but they also understood what was coming next. Retaliation. The Council would not let this challenge go unanswered. In orbit, engineers worked day and night to activate the planetary defense grid, a network of satellites designed to confuse, jam, and blind any invading fleet. Scientists were experimenting with gravity drives, desperate to close the technological gap between human ships and the Council's armadas. And deep underground, where the light never reached, plans were being drawn up that would shape the coming conflict. Not everyone agreed with the defiance. Some feared it. "We can't fight them," a scientist whispered in one meeting. They've existed for millions of years. We're still learning to walk among the stars." The leader turned to him. "They've existed for millions of years, yes. And look what they've become. Comfortable, predictable. They forgot how to fight for something real. That's where we're different." It wasn't arrogance. It was belief. The belief that survival wasn't just about strength, but about purpose. Across the colonies, humans prepared for what was coming. Farmers converted equipment into armor plating. Miners in the asteroid belts volunteered to supply materials for warships. Even children helped, writing messages to the soldiers who would soon stand on the line. "You are fighting for all of us," one message said. Still, doubt lingered in quiet corners. Humanity was proud, but pride alone couldn't stop the fleets of a galactic empire. The Council's armadas numbered in the thousands, with ships large enough to carry entire cities. The thought of facing them made even hardened soldiers pause. But something was happening that no one in the Council had predicted. Other species, small, oppressed, long forgotten, began reaching out to humanity. Secret transmissions slipped through the network, encrypted and cautious. "We heard your answer," one message said. "We have been waiting for someone to say it." The human communications teams decrypted more every day. Each new contact was another spark, another ally born from courage. Humanity had become more than a rebellious world. It was becoming a symbol of resistance. The Council, however, was preparing its own response. Fleets were being mobilized in silence. Whole sectors went dark as war preparations began. The silver-skinned envoy stood before a wall of star maps, watching the glowing outlines of human territories. "They think they can defy us," it muttered. "They will learn what happens to those who forget their place." In the cold emptiness between stars, deep within the Council's controlled space, massive warships awakened. Engines flared to life, casting light into the void. The first of the invasion fleets began their slow journey toward Earth. Human intelligence caught fragments of the transmissions, enough to know what was coming. The fleet commanders gathered once more. "They're moving," someone said, "and they're not hiding it." The leader nodded. "Good. Then we won't hide either." Outside the window, Earth gleamed blue and fragile against the dark. It didn't look ready for war, but appearances had never told the truth about humanity. Every age of their history had been born from struggle, from caves to skyscrapers, from fire to fusion. And now, their struggle stretched across the stars. The tension in the air was almost physical. The world held its breath, waiting for the first spark. The Council believed this would be quick, a lesson to remind everyone of their authority. But the humans were not planning to fight the way anyone expected. In the hidden shipyards of Mars and the ice tunnels of Europa, new kinds of weapons were being tested, tools born from desperation and genius. Humanity didn't have the biggest ships, but they had the wildest minds. They were building things the Council didn't even understand yet. And as the first enemy fleet crossed into human territory, the world that had once seemed so small prepared to stand alone against the stars. The humans didn't know if they would win. They only knew they would fight, because that single word, that single refusal, meant more than life or death. It meant they still belonged to themselves. And as the Council's armada closed in, every human voice whispered the same word again, steady and unbroken. No. The first wave of the Council's armada appeared like a dark curtain against the stars. Thousands of warships, lined in perfect formation, gliding silently through the void toward the solar system. Their hulls shimmered with ancient markings, symbols of authority that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. To most species, the sight of those fleets meant surrender. To humanity, it meant the test had begun. The news reached Earth in hours. Every screen, every comm channel, every outpost received the same data. The Council was coming. The skies over major cities glowed faintly with defense shields being activated. Civilians were ordered into underground shelters, while fleets in orbit shifted into combat positions. It wasn't panic, it was preparation. Humanity had always known this day would come. The question was never if, but when. In the command center beneath the Atlantic, the human leader stood before a projection of the approaching armada. The ships were massive, each one large enough to blot out continents if brought close to a planet. The Council had chosen to send a message, not just to Earth, but to every world watching. This is what happens, their actions said, when someone dares to say no. But humanity had their own message to send. Fleet Command was quiet, except for the hum of data streams. Officers moved quickly between stations, voices calm but firm. Orbital batteries online, lunar defense grid fully charged, Europa shield systems responding. It wasn't a perfect network. Earth's technology was still catching up, but it was something built on grit and ingenuity. Every satellite, every railgun, every drone had been handcrafted by people who believed survival wasn't optional. In orbit above Mars, the Aegis, humanity's largest carrier, drifted in stealth mode. Its captain stood at the observation deck, staring at the empty dark ahead. "They'll arrive within 2 hours," the navigator said. "No sign of communication attempts." "They won't talk," the captain replied. "They want to make an example of us." A faint smile crossed his face, though it wasn't one of confidence. It was the grim smile of someone who already knew the odds and had chosen to fight anyway. He turned to his crew. "Remember what we stand for. Every second we hold them off gives Earth time to breathe. Let's make those seconds count." Elsewhere, in the dense asteroid belt, another group of humans prepared in silence. Miners, engineers, and former smugglers had transformed their mining rigs into makeshift ships. They called themselves the Outer Line. They weren't official soldiers, just people who refused to be spectators. They had no uniforms, no polished ships, but they had something the Council didn't: unpredictability. Their leader, a rough-voiced man who had spent decades in the belt, stared at the stars. "They'll expect the military," he said. "They won't expect us." His crew nodded. They had laced the asteroid fields with traps, magnetic mines, gravitic distortions, hidden railguns powered by stolen energy cells. It was dangerous, reckless, and exactly what humans excelled at. Meanwhile, deep within the Council's flagship, the alien commanders watched their approach unfold with cold precision. The silver-skinned envoy who had once demanded the tribute stood at the front of the command chamber, watching Earth's blue glow grow larger on the view screen. "Primitive," it said softly, "still clinging to their rock like insects." A subordinate turned. "Shall we open communications before the strike?" "No," the envoy replied. "They chose defiance. We will answer with silence." But not everyone aboard agreed. One of the younger officers hesitated. "They're unpredictable," it said, voice low. "They've survived against odds that should have destroyed them. If we underestimate them—" The envoy cut it off sharply. "They are children playing at war. Let their fire burn out." Yet even as the words were spoken, the officer couldn't shake a strange feeling. A quiet unease that something about this species didn't fit the usual pattern. Humanity had grown too fast, too fiercely. Their defiance wasn't just emotion, it was strategy. Back on Earth, the human delegate, the one who had spoken that one word, sat in a silent chamber, watching the live feeds of the Council's approach. The weight of what they had started pressed heavily on their shoulders, but there was no regret. "This is what it means to be free," they whispered. "Not safety, not comfort. Choice." Then the first battle began. A flash of light erupted near Jupiter's orbit as the leading edge of the Council's fleet hit the trap laid by the outer line. Explosive gravity wells tore open in space, flinging ships off course. A handful were ripped apart instantly. The rest scattered, formation breaking as human ships struck from the asteroid shadows. Lasers and kinetic slugs filled the void, turning the dark into a field of fire. The humans didn't fight like the Council. The aliens relied on precision, coordination, hierarchy. The humans relied on chaos, turning debris into weapons, using asteroid fragments as shields, darting in and out like wolves. Every move cost them dearly, but every strike reminded the enemy that this wasn't going to be easy. From the bridge of the flagship, the silver-skinned envoy watched in disbelief. They're attacking in fragments, uncoordinated. It's madness. The young officer beside it murmured, "It's not madness. It's adaptation." On Mars, the Aegis launched squadrons of fighters, small and agile, weaving through the debris. The Council ships fired plasma volleys that could melt cities, but the fighters moved too fast, drawing fire away from the main fleet. One pilot's voice came through the comms, steady despite the chaos. "If they want a message, let's send it in light they can't ignore." And they did. Each explosion, each flash, each sacrifice sent ripples across the network. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's defiance was no longer a secret rebellion. It was an idea spreading like wildfire. On distant worlds, those watching in secret began to choose sides. Small resistance groups in other systems started organizing, using the human broadcast as their rallying cry. Even within the Council's borders, quiet revolts stirred. The word "no" had become universal, but the Council wasn't about to lose easily. For every ship destroyed, they sent 10 more. Their second wave cut through human defenses with precision strikes, burning through orbital outposts and forcing the fleet back toward the inner system. The pressure grew unbearable. On Earth, command stations trembled with reports of losses. The oceans boiled with the energy of falling debris. Still, the humans refused to break. Every failure was turned into a lesson, every defeat into a new strategy. The fleet commanders began predicting the Council's tactics, using captured transmissions to anticipate movement. Slowly, painfully, the humans learned. And deep beneath the surface, another plan was in motion. Scientists in secret labs were testing something the Council didn't yet know existed, a technology born from desperation. They called it the Veil. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, but a shield. An energy field that could distort space itself, hiding whole fleets or even planets. It was still incomplete, unstable, and untested. But it might be the only chance they had. In the lab, one of the scientists wiped sweat from their forehead. "If this works," they whispered, "we can vanish before they strike." The leader beside them shook their head. "Not vanish. Wait. There's a difference." Above, the battle continued. Humanity's fleets fought until their hulls glowed red from heat, until systems burned out and crews worked by hand. Every second was borrowed time. And still, in that chaos, something extraordinary was happening. The impossible unity of billions of human voices standing together. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for meaning. As the third wave of the Council's armada closed in, Earth itself began to darken under the growing shadow of their ships. From orbit, the planet looked fragile, a small blue marble dwarfed by the machines of an empire. In the command center, alarms screamed. The Council's flagship had entered attack range. Every screen flickered red. "They're charging main weapons!" someone shouted. The human leader's voice cut through the noise. "Hold position!" The silence that followed was almost unbearable. No one dared breathe. In the void between worlds, the two forces faced each other. One built on centuries of dominance, the other on a single word of defiance. The first beam of light began to form at the heart of the enemy flagship, a weapon capable of tearing the planet apart. And then, from the dark side of the moon, a faint pulse of energy rippled outward, the first activation of the veil. The light from the Council's weapon fired straight into it, and then everything went black. For a moment, the universe itself seemed to stop breathing. The beam from the Council's flagship struck the invisible wall of the veil and vanished into darkness. No explosion, no light, no sound, just a pulse that rippled silently across space like a heartbeat. Every ship, human and alien alike, froze mid-battle, sensors blind and systems flickering. The stars beyond dimmed as if swallowed by a shadow. Inside Earth's command center, every monitor went black. Operators shouted, trying to reconnect systems, but nothing responded. The network was gone, the satellites blinded. It was as if humanity had disappeared into its own silence. The leader stood at the center of the chaos, staring at the blank screens. "Did it work?" someone whispered. No one answered. No one knew. Above the moon, the fleet drifted helplessly. The energy surge from the veil had overloaded nearly everything. Ships powered down one by one, floating like dark silhouettes against the void. The pilots could see nothing but faint outlines of each other through emergency lights. In the stillness, voices broke through the comms, quiet, uncertain. "Are we alive? Where are the Council ships? What happened to the stars?" Then, slowly, the systems began to flicker back. One by one, sensors came online, revealing the scene outside. The galaxy was gone. Not destroyed. Hidden. The veil had worked, but not like they expected. They were inside a pocket of distorted space, an artificial silence wrapped around the solar system. From the outside, Earth no longer existed. To the Council, it would look as though humanity had been erased. In the command center, a deep sigh of relief spread through the room. "It worked," the engineer said, trembling. "They can't see us." But before anyone could celebrate, another voice cut in, low and tense. "We're not safe. The veil wasn't meant to hold this long. If it collapses while they're firing again..." The sentence didn't need finishing. Everyone knew what that meant. Meanwhile, on the Council's flagship, confusion turned to fury. The alien commander stared at the empty void where Earth should have been. "Impossible!" it hissed. "They can't vanish!" But the sensors confirmed it. The target was gone. Whole planetary readings had vanished as if erased from existence. Other captains reported the same. The fleet was blind, their quarry lost. The younger officer who had once warned against underestimating humans stepped forward. "They've found a way to hide from us," it said softly. "They've changed the rules." The silver-skinned envoy glared, its voice sharp with disbelief. "No one changes the rules. Find them. Every trace, every anomaly. I want that world exposed." Scouts spread across the system, searching for distortions. But the veil was unpredictable, shifting and rippling like a living thing. Time itself bent inside it, creating echoes of light and sound that confused even the most advanced scanners. The Council had the numbers, but they were fighting against a force they didn't understand, a force born from human desperation and ingenuity. Inside the veil, Earth's night sky shimmered strangely. The stars no longer looked familiar, their light twisted through layers of invisible energy. People looked up, feeling the unease of being hidden from the universe itself. The world had gone quiet. No trade signals, no news, no connection with the colonies. Humanity had survived the first strike, but they were now trapped in their own creation. In the underground bunkers, families listened to the hum of the shield generators above them, afraid of what would happen when that hum stopped. Soldiers rested near their stations, waiting for orders that might never come. Even the bravest among them felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on their chest. The scientists who built the veil worked without rest. They studied the unstable readings, trying to extend the field's lifespan. "It's decaying faster than expected," one said, typing furiously. "We're buying time, not safety." "How long?" the leader asked. "Hours. Maybe a day, if we push the generators to the limit." The leader's voice stayed calm. "Then every second matters." On Mars, the fleet captains gathered in holographic conference, their faces lit by red emergency lights. The atmosphere was heavy. They all knew what was coming. "If we drop the veil, the council will see us again," one said. "They'll be waiting." "And if we don't," another replied, "we suffocate under our own shield. We can't stay hidden forever." There was no good choice, only the hard one. Humanity had always survived by doing the impossible, but this time, the impossible was closing in from every direction. Back in deep space, beyond the edge of the hidden system, the Council's armadas began to regroup. They couldn't find Earth, but they could feel the disturbance where the veil pulsed faintly in space. The commander's voice echoed across the comms. "Prepare the resonance cannons. If they have cloaked themselves in the dark, we will tear the dark apart." They began charging weapons meant to fracture the very fabric of space. The first test shot cracked open a nearby moon, reducing it to dust. The message was clear. They would destroy everything until they found humanity. On Earth, the sensors picked up the shockwaves from the Council's attack. Even through the veil, the tremors were visible. The readings sent a chill through every technician watching the monitors. "They're guessing our position," someone whispered. "They're not aiming. They're burning everything." The leader stood silently, eyes fixed on the data. "They're trying to flush us out." "What do we do?" "Make them think they succeeded." A plan began to form, one as dangerous as it was brilliant. If they could project false readings beyond the veil, the Council might fire at an illusion. The plan would require sending out ships beyond the barrier, exposed and alone. Every crew that went out would know they weren't coming back. When the order went out, volunteers filled the lists faster than command could process them. Pilots, engineers, miners, even scientists, all willing to become ghosts for humanity's survival. One of the captains looked at her crew and said quietly, "We've spent our lives looking up at the stars, wondering what we'd do when they finally looked back. Now we know." The decoy fleet launched silently into the distorted void, their engines leaving trails of false energy readings behind. From a distance, it would look like Earth had reappeared in a new position. It was a gamble, but one humanity had to take. Outside the veil, the Council detected the phantom signal. "There!" the silver-skinned envoy shouted. "Fire!" The resonance cannons unleashed their full power. The beam tore through the darkness and struck the false coordinates. From within the veil, the humans saw the sky erupt in light. The illusion worked. The Council believed they had found their target. But the cost was unbearable. The decoy ships, caught between dimensions, were vaporized instantly. The transmission from one ship cut out mid-sentence, the voice calm even in its last moment. "Tell them." It worked. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. The humans who remained clenched their fists, their grief swallowed by resolve. Those sacrifices had bought them time, maybe enough to strike back. Inside the command chamber, the leader turned to the scientists. "How long before we can open the veil from our side?" "Minutes," one said, eyes wide with exhaustion. "But once it opens, there's no closing it again." The leader nodded. "Then let's make that moment count." Across the fleet, orders went out. Engines ignited, weapons charged, shields adjusted. For the first time since the battle began, humanity wasn't running or hiding. They were preparing to emerge. On the Council's side, something strange began to happen. The space where they had fired began to shimmer again, not with destruction, but with light. A faint, expanding glow spread outward, forming the outline of something vast and silent. The officers on the flagship watched in disbelief as readings spiked across every sensor. "Impossible," one whispered. "They can't be alive." The silver-skinned envoy stared at the growing anomaly. "Then what is that?" The light grew brighter, spreading like dawn across the void. The sensors filled with interference. And then, for the first time since the battle began, a human transmission broke through the static, echoing through every channel in the fleet. "This is Earth Command." The voice was calm, cold, unmistakably human. "You wanted your answer." Static crackled. The signal grew stronger. "Here it comes." The stars themselves seemed to hold still as the veil began to open, and the light of 1,000 awakening ships poured through the darkness. The council chamber fell into complete stillness after the echoes of the human ambassador's defiance faded. For a moment, it was as if the entire galaxy held its breath. The luminous banners of the council shimmered faintly against the polished metal walls, their light dimming like dying stars. Every representative from the great empires, the Illyrians, the Varkon Dominion, the Threx Collective, sat motionless, their eyes fixed on the lone human standing before them. The single word humanity had given as an answer still hung in the air, simple yet sharp enough to split the illusion of the council's power. The human delegation did not move. Their silence was their shield. The ambassador's pulse pounded in his ears, but his expression remained unreadable. He could feel the weight of countless eyes, some filled with anger, others with disbelief, and a few, though faint, with admiration. The silence soon broke when one of the elder delegates, a scaled being from the outer realms, hissed in outrage. "Do you understand what you've done, human? You've invited extinction." His voice echoed like cracking stone, but the human did not flinch. His calm response, spoken in a steady tone, only deepened the tension. "You can't threaten what's already been tested beyond its limits." The room buzzed with unease. The council's enforcers shifted uneasily in the shadows, ready to respond to any command. The human's words carried the tone of someone who had seen too much to be afraid anymore. For centuries, humanity had been seen as a lesser species, tolerated, taxed, and controlled by the so-called higher civilizations. The tribute demand was meant to be a reminder of their place. But this time, Earth's answer had changed everything. Outside the chamber, whispers spread like wildfire across the galactic networks. Humans refused the tribute. They defied the council. They spoke one word. Entire colonies paused in their daily routines, waiting for what would follow. Some believed humanity had just doomed itself. Others believed this was the spark that would change the balance of power forever. Within the human ship stationed nearby, tension grew thick in the command room. The crew waited for a signal from their ambassador, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of holographic displays. Their captain, a weathered figure with calm eyes, stood before the main console, arms crossed. "What did he say?" one of the younger officers asked quietly. The captain's reply was soft but heavy with meaning. "He said no." The word hit the crew like a surge of electricity. Some were inspired, others terrified. Saying no to the Galactic Council wasn't rebellion, it was a declaration. It meant they were willing to stand against the collective might of species that had ruled the stars for millennia. But it also meant war could come faster than light itself. Back in the council hall, the response was swift. The Varkon representative slammed his clawed hand against the table, denting the metal. "Then humanity shall be made an example," he roared. "Your worlds will burn until you remember obedience." The ambassador didn't back down. "We've burned before," he said quietly, "and every time we rose stronger." That single line rippled through the chamber, unsettling even the most arrogant delegates. Some remembered the old reports, how humans had survived world wars, extinction-level events, and the near collapse of their own planet. They were unpredictable, dangerous even, There was something in their nature that refused to submit. As the council descended into chaos, one of the quieter delegates, an Illyrian with silver eyes, leaned toward his assistant. "Do not underestimate them," he whispered. "Humans fight differently. They don't fear loss the way others do." Outside the council's grand city, a quiet meeting took place among smaller species who had long suffered under the tribute system. The humans' defiance had sparked something, a memory of freedom. A small coalition began forming in secret, exchanging encrypted messages. They didn't trust the humans completely, but they respected their courage. For the first time in decades, the idea of resistance didn't seem impossible. Meanwhile, deep within the human fleet, a coded transmission arrived from Earth. The message was short, but urgent. "Prepare for escalation. The Council will respond. Do not yield." The captain nodded grimly as he read it. There was no turning back now. The Council, unable to tolerate such open defiance, began drafting a formal resolution. Sanctions were declared. Trade routes to human space were to be cut off. Patrol fleets were authorized to seize or destroy any human vessel found beyond its borders. The plan was simple: starve them into submission without declaring full war. But the Council had underestimated humanity's adaptability. Across the colonies, humans began organizing. They repurposed mining ships into makeshift carriers, freighters into supply vessels, and research stations into fortresses. Every individual, from engineers to farmers, played their part. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that they didn't need permission to exist freely. As tensions rose, a strange discovery changed everything. A small, listening outpost near the edge of human-controlled space intercepted a hidden transmission. It was from within the Council itself. Someone was leaking information, specifically secret communications about a plan called Final Tribute Enforcement. It wasn't just about punishing humanity. It was about total elimination. The plan was older than the current Council itself, buried in archives, waiting for the right excuse. When the news reached the human leadership, disbelief turned into quiet fury. Someone among the Council had wanted this outcome. Someone wanted humanity erased. But who? And why now? The ambassador, still on the Council station, received the same report through a secure channel. As he read it, his jaw tightened. There was a traitor somewhere in the Council ranks, feeding them information and maybe even supporting them in secret. But uncovering them would take time they didn't have. The chamber reconvened one final time to deliver the Council's official verdict. Humanity's defiance had been declared an act of rebellion. All member species were ordered to sever ties. Enforcement fleets were being prepared. The message was clear: submit or perish. But as the sentence was read, the ambassador noticed movement among the delegates. A few, once silent, were no longer following the script. One of them, the same silver-eyed Illyrian, stood up slowly. "Before we condemn them," he said, "perhaps we should ask why they refused. What have we become if fear is the only way we maintain peace?" His words sent a ripple through the hall. Some hissed in protest, others looked away. The Council speaker tried to silence him, but the hesitation had already spread. For the first time in centuries, doubt had entered the Council's core. The ambassador seized the moment. "You've ruled through tribute and terror long enough. You believe unity means obedience, but unity born of fear is nothing but slavery. We've chosen freedom, whatever the cost." Outside the chamber windows, the stars burned cold and distant. The Council's fleets were already moving, but something deeper had shifted, not just in politics, but in the minds of those watching. The human ambassador didn't know it yet, but someone within the Council was about to change everything. The hidden ally who had leaked the Final Tribute Enforcement files had more to reveal, something far more dangerous than the humans could have imagined. And as the first Council warships began to mobilize, a new transmission pulsed through the human network. It carried no name, only a signature, a single encrypted phrase that none of them expected. It read, "They're not united anymore." The captain read the message twice, his heart pounding. The meaning was clear. Somewhere inside the heart of the Galactic Council, cracks had begun to form. Humanity's one-word defiance hadn't just shaken the Council, it had started to split it apart. But who was behind the message? And what were they really planning? The Council fleets moved like a storm across the stars, cutting through the void in perfect formation. Dozens of civilizations had united their armadas under one purpose, to make an example of humanity. But they didn't understand what they were marching into. Humanity was no longer a scattered collection of colonies and stations. They were united in silence, bound by one choice, one word that had changed everything. The tribute had been denied. Now they would fight not to conquer, but to exist. Inside the flagship Sol's Edge, the air was thick with tension. Every console glowed with readiness, and every crew member was at their post, silent and focused. The captain stood at the front, watching the holographic display of enemy movements. 78 Council warships, a technician reported. Estimated arrival in 20 minutes. The captain nodded. And our fleet? 36 ships, sir. Mostly modified transports and defense platforms. The odds were impossible, but no one spoke of surrender. They had prepared for this moment. The human ambassador's defiance at the Council had bought them time. Time to fortify, time to plan, time to understand what they were truly fighting for. And now, that time was up. Across the bridge, a soft chime echoed. An incoming transmission appeared on the screen. The ambassador's face came into focus, calm but serious. "They've voted for total enforcement," he said. "You'll be their first target." The captain didn't look away. "Then we make sure history remembers how humans fought back." The ambassador hesitated, then spoke lower. "There's something else. Someone from inside the Council has been sending us information. Whoever it is, they just sent another message." He uploaded the data, and a coded symbol appeared on the captain's console. 3 circles interlocked, the insignia of the Aelirian delegation. "They've given us coordinates," the ambassador continued. "A weak point in the Council fleet formation. If it's real, it could turn the battle." The captain stared at the symbol. Trusting a Council insider was dangerous, but so was doing nothing. "Understood," he said. "We'll take the risk." Minutes later, the stars flared with motion as the first wave of Council ships entered human space. Massive carriers and dreadnoughts spread out like a net, their engines burning with light. The communication channels flooded with demands. "Human vessels, stand down and prepare for inspection. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction." The captain's reply was a single word. "Denied." The first volley lit up the darkness. Energy beams tore through space, explosions flared across the void, and the silence of the stars shattered into chaos. The human ships scattered, using debris fields and asteroid belts for cover. Improvised rail cannons and pulse turrets returned fire, and though their firepower was smaller, it was precise. Every shot counted. In the command room of Sol's Edge, the crew worked like a single heartbeat. "Redirect power to forward shields. Launch drone swarm 3. Keep the right flank covered." Every order came with urgency, but also determination. The Council had come expecting a quick victory, but what they met was something they didn't understand: resistance born from desperation and unity. Then came the unexpected. As the battle raged, half of the Council's right flank began to pull back, not because of human fire, but because of confusion within their own ranks. A sudden flood of conflicting orders appeared on their network. Council captains argued, ships hesitated, and formations broke. The humans seized the moment. "Now," the captain ordered. "All ships, focus fire on grid 7A. Every weapon fired at once, striking through the gap the Aelirian informant had provided. Two Council cruisers exploded in blinding light, their shock waves scattering smaller ships nearby. Cheers erupted across the human channels, but the captain didn't celebrate. He knew this wasn't victory yet, just survival. On the Council command ship, chaos was spreading. The speaker shouted over the noise, demanding control. "Who is interfering with fleet communications?" But no one could answer. A virus was spreading through their systems, erasing orders, rerouting commands, and sending false data. On their screens, human ships appeared and vanished at random. It was as if the humans were everywhere at once. In truth, it wasn't human technology at work. It was sabotage. The Alerian informant had done more than provide coordinates. They had crippled the Council's ability to fight together. The battle reached its peak as Soul's Edge charged forward, leading the counterattack. The captain watched the burning wrecks of both human and Council ships drift past. It wasn't glory. It was survival through grit and sacrifice. Every loss weighed on him, but there was no time to stop. "Target the command vessel," he ordered. The human flagship's main cannon began to charge. The Council fleet tried to regroup, but the virus still disrupted their chain of command. Then, a sudden voice came through the channel, a distorted but familiar tone. It was the Aelerian with silver eyes. "Captain, listen carefully. The Council is about to deploy a planetary disruptor. It will destroy your world, not your fleet. You must stop the activation core on the command ship." The captain's heart tightened. "How long do we have?" 10 minutes. That was all he needed to hear. Soul's Edge turned sharply, engines blazing, cutting through enemy lines. The ship shook as blasts hit its hull, but it kept going. "Prepare boarding teams!" the captain shouted. "We're going inside that ship!" Moments later, shuttles launched into the chaos, weaving between wreckage and laser fire. They smashed through the side of the Council's command vessel, breaching the hull. Inside, corridors filled with smoke and alarms. The humans pushed forward, driven by nothing but instinct and determination. At the heart of the vessel, the disruptor core pulsed with a cold blue glow. The captain and his team fought their way to it, every second counting down. When they finally reached the control room, the Speaker of the Council stood waiting. "You don't understand," the Speaker said, his voice calm despite the destruction around them. "Humanity's defiance threatens the balance of the galaxy. We cannot allow chaos to spread." The captain raised his weapon but didn't fire. "You call it balance. We call it chains." The Speaker's eyes narrowed. "And what happens when you become what you hate?" The words hung in the air for a moment. The captain didn't answer. He simply stepped forward and manually disengaged the core's controls. Sparks erupted as systems overloaded. The disruptor began to collapse in on itself, building toward a massive implosion. "Time to leave," he said quietly. The humans ran, alarms blaring behind them. As they escaped, the Council ship exploded in a brilliant flash, lighting up the entire battlefield. The shockwave rippled through the void, forcing both fleets to break off. For a moment, there was only silence again. In the aftermath, the Council fleets began to retreat. Their formations were shattered, their command lost. Humanity had survived, barely, but they had done what no one believed possible. The ambassador's voice came through the comms, quiet but steady. "It's over. The Council's authority is broken. They'll never rule the same way again." The captain looked out at the burning horizon of space, exhausted but alive. "It's not over," he said. "It's just changed." He was right, because as the debris drifted and the survivors gathered their strength, a final message appeared on every human channel. It carried the same encryption signature as before, the Aelerian informant's mark. But this time, the message was longer. It read, "You've won more than you know. The Council was never united. The tribute system was designed to hide something deeper, a weapon buried under their capital world. It wasn't about control, it was about fear." The captain stared at the message, realization dawning. Humanity's defiance hadn't just broken the Council, it had exposed something far greater. The tribute wasn't only political, it was protection against something the Council had kept secret for centuries. And as the transmission ended, a faint signal pulsed from the far edge of the galaxy. An ancient code, awakening after thousands of years. The humans had won the battle, but the real war had just begun. The faint signal echoed through the quiet ruins of the battlefield, a whisper that stirred unease among the surviving human ships. For a long moment, no one spoke. The space around them was littered with debris and drifting wreckage, glowing faintly under the reflection of nearby stars. The Council's fleets were gone, scattered and broken. Humanity had won, but the victory felt heavy. It was not the kind of triumph that came with celebration. It was the kind that left you wondering what it had really cost. On the bridge of Soul's Edge, the captain stood in silence, watching the faint, pulsing code on the main display. The signal was faint but steady, transmitting from deep within the core worlds of the former Council. He knew it wasn't a distress call. It was something else, older, colder, deliberate. "Can we trace it?" he asked. His communications officer nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. It's coming from Eclipsera, the old Council capital." The name hung in the air. Eclipsera, a world long considered sacred, forbidden to all but the highest members of the Galactic Council. Now that the Council had collapsed, its secrets were no longer protected. The ambassador's voice came through the comm line, sounding tired but focused. "We intercepted the same signal on our end. The Illyrian informant confirmed it. Whatever the Council was hiding, it's activating now. That's why they demanded the tribute for so long. It wasn't just power. It was containment." The captain frowned. "Containment of what?" There was a pause before the ambassador replied. "Something they didn't dare destroy." A quiet settled over the bridge. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the thrill of victory fading into dread. The war might have ended, but it was becoming clear that the Council had been afraid of something far worse than rebellion. For the next few days, humanity's fleet remained on alert, salvaging what they could and helping wounded allies from the smaller species that had joined their stand. Messages of solidarity came from across the galaxy. Races who had once feared to speak now sent words of gratitude and hope. For the first time, humanity was not seen as defiant troublemakers, but as the ones who had broken the chains. Yet amid the rebuilding, the mystery deepened. The signal from Eclipsera grew stronger, almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat buried under the surface of a dead world. Data from long-range probes showed massive energy fluctuations beneath the planet's crust, centered around an ancient structure buried miles underground. When the captain met the ambassador aboard a neutral station orbiting Eclipsera, they both knew they couldn't ignore it. "We came this far," the captain said. "We have to see what it is." The ambassador nodded. "But if the Council feared it for centuries, there's a reason. We proceed carefully." Together, they led a small expedition to the surface. The once golden city of Eclipsera lay in ruins, its towers cracked and covered in dust. The air was still, heavy with the weight of forgotten history. In the distance, faint mechanical hums echoed beneath the surface, where the signal originated. They descended into the underground facility, a labyrinth of tunnels and metallic corridors that stretched endlessly downward. Ancient machines, half buried in stone and dust, lined the walls. Faint symbols glowed faintly as they passed, written in languages older than any known species. The deeper they went, the stronger the signal became, until they reached a massive chamber with a single black sphere at its center, suspended by energy fields. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the signal. The ambassador approached cautiously, scanning the sphere. "It's not a weapon," he said quietly. "It's a vault." The captain frowned. "A vault for what?" The ambassador hesitated before answering. "Knowledge, or something the Council didn't trust anyone to know." As he spoke, the sphere shimmered, reacting to their presence. Holographic images flickered across the chamber walls, records of civilizations long gone, of wars older than recorded history, of a time before the Council even existed. They saw vast empires rising and falling, and then one image froze on the wall, a colossal figure of light and shadow, standing before a world engulfed in flame. The translation software struggled, but one phrase became clear: the Devourers of Suns. The crew exchanged alarmed glances. The Council hadn't created the tribute system out of greed. They had done it to fund the defenses that kept something far worse sealed away. The tribute wasn't about dominance. It was about survival. The ambassador looked shaken. They weren't afraid of rebellion. They were afraid of awakening it. As if responding to their realization, the sphere began to destabilize, its glow pulsing faster. The chamber trembled, dust raining down from above. "It's reacting to us," the captain said. "We need to go." They barely made it out before the sphere collapsed inward, sealing itself once more. When the tremors stopped, the signal vanished completely. Whatever had been locked inside had either gone dormant again or shifted to another frequency. The humans returned to orbit, uncertain if they had stopped something or triggered it. Days later, as reports came in from across the galaxy, strange readings began appearing near dying stars. Massive energy fluctuations, similar to what they had detected on Eclipsera. But no direct threat emerged. It was as if the universe had stirred, then gone silent again. In the following weeks, the remnants of the Council officially dissolved. Former member species began forming new alliances, this time built on cooperation rather than fear. Humanity was invited to help draft the foundation of what they called the Concord, a new assembly meant to replace the Council's rule. The ambassador represented Earth, while the captain remained with the fleet, ensuring stability in the chaos that followed. The ambassador often thought about the vault, the images, and the phrase that lingered in his mind: the Devourers of Suns. Perhaps it was just an ancient myth, a warning from a civilization long gone. But a small part of him wondered if the Council's tribute had kept something dormant that was now slowly waking. When the captain and ambassador met one final time, they stood together on the observation deck of Sol's Edge, watching a nearby star burn quietly in the distance. "Do you think we did the right thing?" the captain asked. The ambassador was silent for a long time before answering. "We chose freedom over fear. That's never the wrong choice. But freedom means responsibility now. We'll have to be ready for whatever comes next." The captain nodded. "And if it does come?" "Then we'll face it the way humans always have," the ambassador said softly. "Together." The stars outside shimmered, endless and indifferent. But humanity's mark among them now burned brighter than ever. They had defied the most powerful force in the galaxy with a single word, and though it had shaken the balance of power, it had also awakened something deeper: hope. On Earth, for the first time in generations, people looked to the night sky not with fear, but with pride. The story of humanity's defiance spread across worlds, whispered in marketplaces, recited in classrooms, remembered by those who had once been silent. It wasn't about victory. It was about dignity, about the courage to stand when kneeling was easier. And though the faint pulse of that ancient signal was gone, its echo remained. A reminder that the galaxy was vast, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Humanity had entered a new chapter, not as subjects of tribute, but as equals among the stars. The final message from the Aelirian informant arrived quietly one night, long after the Council's end. It contained no coordinates, no warnings, just a single line. "Your word didn't just shatter the Council. It changed the future." The captain smiled faintly as he read it. He looked out into the dark, where millions of stars stretched endlessly, and whispered the same word that had started it all. No, it wasn't defiance anymore. It was promise. A vow that humanity would never again live on its knees. and as Soul's Edge drifted silently through the void, the galaxy turned, forever changed by the species that had dared to speak one word and mean it.